Sandy.
Hi.
If you don't mind just muting yourself for now, that would be helpful. Thank you.
जी सत श्री अकाल जी।
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਗੁਰਮੀਤ।
सत श्री अकाल जी। ठीक है, हुण आवाज हुण सुनदी है जी?
हाँ जी, आवाज ठीक ठाक सुनती है।
चलो ठीक है। मैं it was I was having difficulty in connecting with साडे प्रॉब्लम इत्थे बहुत हुंदी सिग्नल दी। हाँ जी।
ओह अच्छा जी। हाँ जी।
We always have problem with signal. Sometimes you have problem, but other times it comes on. But today was very bad weather anyway here in Wales.
Sure, I understand. I'm just going to
Good
wait another few minutes whilst we're allowing everyone in. I'm also going to make sure that everyone is on screen, so all of the attendees can be on screen. But we have the speakers who are going to be at the event this evening. So just bear with me whilst I...
Sure. Carry on, do the admin, whatever it needs.
Of course, thank you. And we will be starting in about 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, sure. I'm here.
I have one of my former colleagues online, Ed.
Oh, lovely.
Hi, Ed. I'm worried now, Ed. I'll have to worry about my graphics now.
Thank you. We're just going to wait another minute or two and then we'll start.
Okay.
Ed is the master on how to present statistics.
Fantastic. Well, we're in very esteemed company then. We really appreciate you joining us, Ed.
I'm glad you managed to get somebody from the Senate, although Jane Hutt couldn't do that. I think by very short notice, wasn't it? But
yes.
They did come back to me that she couldn't do it, but that they arranged somebody else, which was good.
That is good, yes. Hopefully, as I said, we're just going to wait a couple of moments, but hopefully she'll be joining us very shortly as well.
Yeah, sure.
I think I'll start. First of all, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. This is the first time that we've had a launch event for the British Sikh Report with a Welsh focus. So it's really good to be able to talk about the British Sikh Report, talk about the work that we've been doing over the last few years, and also making sure that with regards to the Welsh Sikh community, that we're reflecting what is obviously an important aspect of identity, as well as community-based ideas, concepts, and the like. This is the 8th annual British Sikh Report. We've been running since 2013. 2013 was the first one, although the organisation itself was set up in 2012 to ensure that we were producing valuable and important statistical information about the Sikh community. we were initially hoping to launch the British Sikh Report 2020 as we normally do, which was in the spring, and we'd made arrangements with Gurmeet Singh Randhawa from the Sikh Council of Wales to ensure that this launch could have taken place in the Senate. Unfortunately, that wasn't possible, and the impact of the pandemic has been huge, and it's meant that we've had to not only delay the launch of the British Sikh Report this year, but we also haven't been able to do the big events that we were hoping to do. So it's been unfortunate, and little did any of us think that we'd still be in this situation in November of this year. So we're doing things by Zoom, much like most of 2020 has been. Virtually everyone's on Zoom at the moment. I wanted to say thank you to our supporting partners in helping produce the British Sikh Report, and those are the NHS Blood and Transplant, City Sikhs, and the Sikh Assembly. We've come a long, long way since our first report came out in 2013. And the one thing that's driven us the entire time has been this endeavour to provide and produce robust, reliable data about the British Sikh community from our very beginnings. And the reason why documents of this nature are so important is because it gives people numbers. People like to have numbers. People like to know what it is that they're looking at, what figures they're talking about, how those figures matter in their day-to-day lives. And I think it's important to allow individuals to have that ability to talk about figures in such a way that it allows us to understand the specific issues affecting any particular community. Now, we focus on a variety of diverse and topical issues this year. You'll hear more about them in a few moments, but we've looked at issues ranging from organ donation, disability, loneliness, marriage and weddings, relationship and sex education in schools, faith schools, and other matters. And we've been helped by an impressive team of dedicated volunteers to produce this information. I think it's important to stress that this is a collaborative project. It wouldn't happen without the teamwork that we have. And as you read through the pages of the British Sikh Report, I hope and I'm certain that you'll discover aspects of the British Sikh community that you'll find interesting, intriguing, and perhaps even surprising. So that's my introduction. Thank you for joining us. I'm now going to hand over to our first speaker, and that is Jagdev Singh Virdi. He is the editor of the British Sikh Report. He's a former deputy director at the Office for National Statistics. He's a fellow of the Royal Statistical Society and a member of the UK National Statistics Advisory Group. Over to you, Jagdev. Jagdev, you just need to unmute yourself.
I need to share my screen, which is disabled at the moment.
Yes, I've just.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you. Can everybody see this screen now?
Sure, we
you see this?
can.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm going to whiz through some of the findings of the survey this year. The survey was mainly conducted online through social media and websites and so on, and also through Sikh and Punjabi organisations. What we do is we monitor the responses by age, by gender, by marital status, and also by regions of the UK. And wherever there's a shortfall, we try to boost the samples in those categories. Generally, we have a shortfall in the elderly through the online sort of surveys. So we try to address that shortfall by going out with paper forms and selecting at random, sort of going to gurdwaras and day centres for the elderly. With Quality Sure and all the responses, I put them through various sort of algorithms to check them for consistency internally and externally. And the resulting sample that we had this year was 2,700, which is bigger than any previous year. Last year was 2,500. The year before it was about 2,000. So each year of the last few years, the sample has been increasing. I just want to also start by giving some grateful to all the team members who help. They're listed on page 53 of the report, and we're all volunteers doing this work on this report each year. Yes, so it is very much seva or selfless or service, giving your own time. I should also say that generally what we try to do is, my background is in official statistics. I was in the Office for National Statistics, as just we mentioned. And what we try to do is apply the principles of the Code of Practice for Official Statistics. I try to stick as much as possible to that, to make sure that the statistics are reliable and robust, and also that they're useful to inform policy or the purposes for which they're to be used. So they must be of value to users. The survey this year covered many topics. Normally we have some key topics each year, and then also the general sort of demographics so to help us to analyze the data. So this year we covered organ donation, voting in the general election, accommodation or property ownership, whether you own your home or live in rented accommodation, crime and fear of crime, looked at marriages and weddings, relationships and sex education in school, issue of Sikh faith schools, disability, loneliness, connections with Punjab and India, drug abuse in Punjab and what the views are of people living here of that issue, and the arts. And we also carry on collecting data on identity, ethnicity, observance of the 5Ks, the star, whether you're an Amritdhari Sikh or not, and basic demographic information like age, gender, marital status, where you live, and so on. So I'm going to whiz through some of the highlights on each of those topics. So firstly, looking at whether you are practicing Amritdhari Sikh. Overall, across the UK, we had 11% reported as being Amritdhari, and that varied by age. So 25% of those aged over 65 were Amritdhari, and lower percentages in the lower age groups. And so some of the other topics, the other issues, we can then break the data down as to what are the views of those who are Amritdhari and those who are not. Looking at accommodation first, where people live. So we found that 45% of people live in wholly owned properties, and 29% are buying with a mortgage. Only 11% in rented accommodation, and within that, 8% in private. There's 2% in council housing, and 1% living in housing association properties. 9% living rent-free, possibly with parents or other relatives, and they're concentrated in the younger age groups. I'm just flicking through these because all of these charts are actually in the report that you can look at later. Crime and fear of crime. The question that asked was, have you or your family ever directly experienced any hate crimes in the UK? And we asked her whether it was before 2016 and after, because with the Brexit referendum in 2016, there was a shift in some areas with the incidence of hate crime. Now the majority, as the grey bar showed, reported not having suffered hate crime directly either before or since 2016. But those who say they have, it actually reduces by age, so the highest percentage of younger victims. The fear of crime was actually higher. 9% were very worried and 29% fairly worried in terms of fear of crime. And this rises from 3% at the lowest end, those aged 19 or less, up to 19% for those aged 65 or over. So while the actual incidence goes down by age, the fear of crime goes up by age. Marriages, we asked about whether people are married, and 2/3 of British Sikh adults are married, compared with about half of the UK as a whole. And the married rate increases by age, as in, I think, the general population, that younger people, so those aged 20 to 34, 35% of them are married, whereas 90% of the 65 plus are married. And we asked how you met your partner or spouse. 44% said they'd had arranged marriages, but this varies by age. So just 13% among the 20 to 34-year-olds who are married, but rising up to 80% of the 65 plus. And conversely, love marriages, in quotes, the way you met your own partner, is highest in the youngest age groups. So that shift is clearly there in the statistics. And Amritdhari Sikhs are more likely to have arranged marriage at 63%. We asked about the costs of weddings because this has always been an issue with the not just Sikh but Asian weddings generally. South Asian weddings are getting more and more exorbitant, and it does vary by age, as you would expect. So the four sets of bars here. One on the left is for 20 to 34-year-olds, then 35 to 49, 50 to 64, and 65 and over. So the 65 and over, most of those weddings would have happened long time ago, possibly in India or other countries where the people came from. So the vast majority of those cost under £10,000, and nearly all of them under 30,000. Whereas for the 20 to 34-year-olds, they range from under 10,000 to over 100,000. And we asked what was the most expensive part of your wedding. Receptions now seem to be the most expensive item. Historically, it was the nandkaris and the lunch and breakfast at the Gurdwara. For some, honeymoon was the most expensive part. And we're also looking at it by whether you're Amritdhari or not. The Amritdhari spent much less. 50% of them spent less than £10,000, which is actually shown in a different chart, not this one. We asked about relationships and sex education in schools. Majority do support it, but it declines with age, as you can see in the top chart in the first block. 90% of the younger groups, 2/3 of the oldest group are actually supporting it. And also there's lower support from males compared with females, and lower support from Amritdhari Sikhs. And we asked this question of different types of relationships and teaching about various types. So these two examples here, the first one is about single parent families, and the second chart is about families with same-sex parents. And whilst the pattern is the same, there's lower support for the same-sex parents. And this is the picture across various family types, that although the trend is similar by age, but the levels are different. Now, regarding this sex education in schools, in some parts of the country, there have been protests outside schools by some communities. So we asked about people's views about these protests. And the majority don't agree with the protests, but there's slightly more agreement from men than from women with the protests. But I said majority, though, do disagree with the protests. Turning to Sikh faith schools, we asked whether there's a Sikh faith school in your area. Now, given that a lot of the large part of the Sikh population concentrated in certain parts of the country, and some of those areas or districts may have a Sikh faith school. So you get quite a fairly high figure. 52% of Sikhs have said that there is a Sikh faith school in their area. And for Amritdharis, who seem to be more concentrated in those areas, so 64% of them said that they do live near a Sikh faith school. But we also asked whether you think there should be a Sikh faith school in your area. And the majority, a small majority, 54% said they would like a Sikh faith school in their area. But there's higher support from males and also from Amritdhari. So Amritdharis is 72% support for a Sikh faith school in their area.
Can I come in a minute?
Could I, if I just finish going through,
Okay, fine,
and then maybe save the questions, or if you put them in the chat, then we won't forget.
Okay.
Reasons for choice of school, we asked, and there were various options, plus people could write in their own reasons. And the most important, the highest reason was educational achievement. 75% said that was the most important reason why they would choose the school that they choose. Then it was location and proximity. And third was facilities at the school. The faith ethos in its own right came 7th on the list. But at the same time, the previous question was saying that they do want a faith school. So what that is telling us is that people want a faith school, but very important to them, in addition to that, is that the school has to have good quality educational achievement result. It has to be delivering on quality education. And we asked about disabilities, what type of disabilities people have, and of those who have said that they're disabled, about half said that they have a physical impairment, 18% said there's mental health, and then the other categories that were also listed, like hearing, visual, autism, learning disability, physical disability, or complex health needs. And the complex health needs was actually 7%, which is equal to the third highest. The disabled are there in all age groups, but the highest percentage is in the 65 plus age group, where there's 17% that are reported having disability. We asked whether those who are disabled get any assistance from social services or carers. Now the second bar there, over 50% said that they're actually just looked after by the family. A quarter get some assistance from other social services or carers organised either through community or volunteer organisations, or they've organised them privately. And a separate question, we were asking about whether people have any respite care, and only 19% have some respite care. So, but largely they're depending on family to look after them. Questions on loneliness. We asked how often do you feel that you lack companionship? And here the trend was very much actually that those who feel lonely some of the time, it was actually highest in the youngest age group, and it went down by age. Those who often felt lack of companionship was actually fairly even spread. That's the dark blue bar. It does go slightly down and then back up again. But the second bar, which is some of the time, clearly goes down by age group. And then looking at that same question by marital status, what this shows is that those who are in relationships, whether they're married or civil partnered, have the lowest in terms of often feeling lack of companionship, and those who are divorced or separated or widowed, they're at the higher end of feeling lack of companionship. Then we asked about issues of concern in the Punjab to people, and drugs and alcohol was the highest concern, corruption was second, environment and human rights were also of concern. Lesser so was the economy and education. We asked about people's interest in different types of arts, and the most popular arts was film and cinema. And second to that was the Sikh religious paintings and art. But then there were lots of other categories as well. And again, I don't want to go through it in detail, but it's all in the report. So that's where I was going to finish, because I think the next speaker is going to talk about voting. Amarveer, would you like me to go through these slides, or are you going to talk to these as well?
Amarveer, you're currently on mute, so we can't hear you, unfortunately.
Cheers, thank you, Jasveer. Waigajiga Khalsa, Waigajiga Fateh. First of all, I just want to say perhaps I'm biased on where I'll pay most emphasis in terms of the statistics. All of them are robust and all of them are independent, but voting in particular is one which is close to my heart because it's the one that directly leads to policy discussions. So further ado, yeah, thank you very much. So before I begin, I just want to say historically Sikhs have contributed to electoral turnout, and the latest BSR has also reinforced this, with 78% of respondents said that they voted for a specific party, 9% said they didn't vote for any, and 13% said that they did not wish or to say how or whether they voted. So no surprises here. So high turnout has been historically the case among Sikhs in Britain. In terms of the overall vote share of where BSR respondents voted, 45% of them said they voted for Labour, 22 Tory, 6 Lib Dem, and further down we have Plaid Cymru, the Welsh nationalists, at 0.1%. So Sikhs have largely voted Labour, and this has also been the case historically. So again, no surprises here. But the more interesting trend is on age. So comparing voting behaviour of British Sikhs against the rest of the UK electorate, age was clearly a dividing line in party politics. And the data indicates that little has changed since the Brexit referendum, with Labour still winning a larger majority of younger voters. and the Conservatives miles ahead amongst older Britons. This is also replicated nationally as well. So this is interesting. Nationally, in fact, for every 10 years an older a voter is, the chance of voting Tory increases by around 9 points, and the chance of them voting Labour decreases by 8 points. And the tipping point, the age at which a voter is more likely to have voted Conservative than Labour, is now 39, down from 47 since the last election. And it's clear that for British Sikhs, a similar trend is also likely to be observed. The other interesting trend is also on gender. So if you go to the next slide, please. Fantastic. So the gender split in terms of vote share also shows a wider variance between males and females. Amongst the Sikh electorate compared to the UK as a whole, 50% of Sikh women and 39% of Sikh men voted for Labour, whereas for the UK population as a whole, 35% women and 31% of men voted for the, 14%, what I meant to say was that inversely for the Conservative Party, 14% of Sikh females voted for Tories compared to 31% of male counterparts. So the explanation for this, for the greater proportion of Sikh females electorates opting for the Labour, include there being an entire page of the Labour 2019 manifesto dedicated to women, containing pledges such as appointing a specific commissioner to tackle violence amongst women, an issue that's been rife within the Sikh South Asian community, and all the gender-specific policies, including equal pay legislation, increasing paid maternity leave from 9 to 12 months. And also, coincidentally, Labour is the largest mainstream political party that has more females compared to males as well. So that's pretty much it. So again, this section I would say is robust, and it's been the most robust since the history of the BSR, and it continues to be so. Of course, we always want more respondents, so we have a greater understanding of which party Sikhs opt for, depending on which constituency as well, and also within each region. So I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you, Jasveer. Thank you, Jagdev. It's been an honour to be part of this process, and I look forward to helping to build a more robust voice for Sikhs within Britain. So thanks once again. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Amraved, thank you so much for that, and it was really helpful just hearing about the voting intentions, the ways people voted, and the impact that that obviously has on policy making. You're absolutely right. It's such an important thing for us to be fully aware of. So thank you, and thanks again for your contributions to the British Sikh Report this year. I'm now going to invite Dr. Jagbeer Jyoti Johal to say a few words. Dr. Jyoti Johal is a senior lecturer in Sikh Studies at the University of Birmingham. She's also a contributor to Radio 4's Thought for the Day. Jagbeer.
Thank you, Jasveer. It's an important month for Sikhs as we celebrate Bandi Jodh Divas, but also Guru Nanak's Gurpurab. And I think it's an important contribution that we as a community are making with reference to the engagement in the debate around organ donation. Now, until recently in the United Kingdom, organ donation relied on donors opting in by joining the donor register or a family consenting to a donation when a loved one had died. The Organ Donation Deemed Consent Act 2019, approved by Parliament, received royal assent in March 2019 and came into effect in England in May 2020. And as a result of that, England has moved to an opt-out system referred to as Max and Kira's Law, named after Kira Ball and Max Johnson. Kira Ball 9 was killed in a road traffic accident in the summer of 2017. Kira's organs helped 4 people. Her kidneys went to 2 adults, her liver went to a baby, and her heart went to a 9-year-old Max Johnson, who had heart failure caused by a viral infection. Max and his family campaigned in favour of an opt-out system for organ donation. This new system moves away from an opt-in system of consent to donating organs to that soft opt-out system, which means that all adults in England are considered to have agreed to be an organ donor when they die, unless they have recorded a decision not to do so. It is hoped that with this new legislation, there will be an increase in organ donation within communities. With reference to the change in the law, BSR survey asked people whether they knew that the law was changing in 2020. 51% of respondents said that they did know. However, this varied by age group, when those aged between 50 and 64 showing the highest level of awareness at 59%, while the level of awareness decreased with younger age groups. 54% of female British Sikhs were aware of the law change, compared with 49% of males. Following the publication of the NHS Blood and Transplant Faith and Organ Donation Action Plan, there has been a recognition of the important role that faith-based organisations can play in raising awareness and stimulating debate regarding organ donation. Consequently, in recent years, a number of Sikh faith-based public education campaigns and donor registration initiatives have played a vital role in trying to improve the uptake of registering for organ donation in the Sikh community. As Sikhs celebrated the 550th birth anniversary of Guru Nanak, the founder of the faith, in 2019, it coincided with a remarkable year of activism promoting organ donation within the Sikh community. Guru Nanak's teachings, which emphasize spiritual wisdom, righteous living, and responsibility towards God and its creation, have been embraced to advocate for organ donation. Guru Nanak advocated for a sense of duty and way of life achieved through practicing three core principles: Naam Japana, recitation of God's name; Eet Karna, earning an honest living; and Vand Shakana, selfless service. These core practices are both internal and external practices that enable spiritual growth and facilitate moral and ethical living. They emphasize an individual's social responsibility to ensure the well-being of society. As discussed in the British Sikh Report 2019, the last core teaching, Vand Shakana, is most pertinent here to highlight how the Sikh teachings should be seen as a strong advocate for organ donation, because Sikhs fundamentally believe that the body and organs are simply mechanisms to allow the eternal soul to experience life during this stage of existence. Now, when we think of Seva, Sikh teachings place great emphasis on Seva and altruism, and Sikhs engage in three forms of Seva, selfless service. Seva rendered through one's body, Tan; Seva rendered through one's mind, Man; and Seva rendered through giving of one's material wealth, Dhan. While all three forms of Seva are considered equally important, the Sikh Guru stressed that all Seva should be a labour of love performed without desire, Nishkam, without intention, Nishpat, and with humility, Nimrata. BSR asked British Sikhs if they agree with this definition. 67% said that they did consider organ donation as a form of Seva, whereas 11% said that they did not. 22% said that they either did not know or did not wish to say. 66% of females and 68% of males agreed with the idea of organ donation being a form of Seva. In 2019, to mark the 550th birth anniversary of Guru Nanak, and most recently in 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen countless Sikhs all over the world carrying out volunteer charity work with their ethos firmly embedded within Sikh philosophy and entirely consistent with the service of donating organs to give life to others and alleviate suffering. Now, this advocacy has been demonstrated by individual focus campaign groups, for example, Match for Meena, Swab for Haj, but also Hope for Anaya, which Sandy Shekhar will speak about in a little while. Charities and wider campaigns have also been prevalent in raising the awareness around organ donation. And one that stands out for the Sikh community is the Mandeep Muddar Memorial Foundation. And Bobby Muddar, the chair of that foundation, has done a lot of work in terms of raising awareness about the importance of organ donation. Gurdwaras have also been involved in this. In 2019, Sri Guru Singh Sabha Southall, with Sikh Welfare and Research Trust, engaged in an organ donation campaign with NHS Blood and Transplant Sport. Harmeet Gill, a trustee at the Sri Guru Singh Sabha Gurdwara, described how on 12th of November, to mark the 550th birth anniversary of Guru Nanak, his Gurdwara decided to do something different in the UK, which would have an everlasting legacy. Taking on board the legacy of Guru Nanak and all the Sikh Gurus who devoted their lives to humanity and sacrificed their lives for the welfare of others, they decided to start a conversation amongst the community to dispel the fears, myths, and misinformation that surrounds organ donation. Now, Guru Nanak Darbar Gurdwara Gravesend has also created a community engagement and wellbeing team since November 2017, with a view of increasing activities related to the improvement of the health and well-being of the Sangat and the local community at large. And since 2018, they have actively promoted the issue of organ donation. In conclusion, guided by a wish to relieve suffering, a sense of altruism and love for social action, younger members of the community have become very proactive in their advocacy for organ donation. They have recognized the role that the Gurdwara can play in educating the community on important issues, and this is their seva via mind. Providing such knowledge and education is altruistic and selfless because it benefits the whole community. As young leadership positions within Gurdwaras become more open, these young people will become important influencers in the debate because they recognize the impact of chronic conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, and hypertension, which may result in the need of a transplant. So the above Sikh campaigns and Sikh theology highlight the positive outcome of collaborating with community and religious leaders and their organizations to influence and educate a community about organ donation. It is clear that religious initiatives, especially when facilitated by religious organizations, can really add value in raising the community's understanding of the life-giving benefits of organ, blood, and tissue donation, especially when this is done utilizing Sikh values such as seva and daya, compassion, and in turn, improving the health outcomes of the community. And on a final note, it is also important to kind of think about how these conversations on organ donation have led to follow-up conversations on other health conditions that may lead to the need for organ donation in the future, i.e. heart disease, obesity, and diabetes. In light of this, maybe it's time for Gurdwaras to reflect on how they can help improve their congregation's health, i.e. help reduce people's cholesterol and blood pressure levels through reducing sugar and salt in food and increasing fruit, vegetable consumption in langar provided. Whilst these are difficult conversations, it is clear that there is a growing advocacy within the community for a change when it comes to health matters, and this can be harnessed by the NHS and the community as a whole. Thank you.
Jagbir, thank you so much for that. And I think it's always helpful to have that contextualization of the issue. So thank you so much for the article, for your contribution to the British Sikh Report. And on the issue of organ donation, this brings me very swiftly on to Sandy Shoka, who is here this evening. Sandy is an organ donation activist and campaigner, and she was heavily involved in the Hope for Anaya campaign. So I'm now going to invite you, Sandy, to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just try and share my screen. Is that possible?
Yeah, if you just give us a couple of moments, we'll just sort that out. I think Big Dad needs to make you the host so you can share your screen. Okay. There we go, Sandy.
Lovely, thank you. Okay. Right, can everybody see a picture of beautiful Anaya?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I've gone into a little bit of detail on this report, and I'm conscious that it may evoke some emotion, so I'll be speaking for about 5 minutes. So if anybody does want to step away, please do. I don't want anything to have a negative detriment. But first thing I want to say is thank you to British Sikh Report on behalf of myself, Anaya's family, and the Hope for Anaya team. It's great to be back here. Last time we presented, we had just announced that Anaya had found a living donor, and we were going to be approaching the road to transplant. Today, I want to talk about the timelines for the search and all the activity that took place and some of the response that we had from the community. I've been quite frank in some parts because I think it's important that we discuss this as a community, because it's only through discussion and being honest that we're going to elicit the changes that are needed. Okay, just to start off, I appreciate not everybody's familiar with the NIAS campaign. We're talking about an ordinary family here from Newcastle, Amrit and Jyoti, expecting their first child. And it was a normal pregnancy, no issues were expected, and this one was due in January 2017. Time of great celebration, first grandchild for Anaya's grandparents on the Nanga side, and first Buddhi for Amrit's side of the family. Unfortunately, during their routine checkup on the 19th of December, Amrit and Jyoti were told that the baby was seriously ill, and it appeared that she would not possibly survive birth. And if she did, at best, she may only be around for a couple of days. So really terrible news for a young couple expecting their first baby. Very unexpected. And at that point, they thought there was 5 weeks before Anaya was due to be born. But actually, Anaya showed up just days later. Anaya was born on 22nd of December 2016. And while survival wasn't anticipated, it was the first time that I actually saw the spirit of this young child, because she battled to thrive. And I've just picked out some key points in her journey. But we have here that her left kidney was removed on the 11th of February 2017, and she underwent her first transfusion. And in the end, she went through almost 30 transfusions, and this is a key factor as to why we needed to run a campaign. In March 2017, Anaya's second kidney was removed as it had grown to fill the space. Both kidneys together weighed 1.5 kilos, which is a significant amount for a newborn child. Later that month, in fact, a day or two later, Anaya had a massive stroke. And amazingly, at that time, Amrit and Jyoti decided that should Anaya not survive, they would make her organs available for transplant for other families in need. However, Anaya did survive and was placed on dialysis to manage the fact that she had no kidneys. And some 10 months after birth, Anaya came home for the first time. So you can see the happy little face. So with Anaya being on transplant, parents were told that they could donate a kidney, and of the two, it was determined that Amrit was a better match. But this factor of 30 transfusions was going to rear its head. Now, there's one important point here, that a living donor offered a better chance of success, hence trying to have a kidney from one of the parents. The criteria outside of that was that the kidney could come from somebody 28 to 42 with the blood type of B. But the devastating news, just as Anaya was at a point of being able to be transplanted, was that neither Amrit or Jyoti were a match. The number of transfusions rendered them incompatible with their own daughter, and at that time they were at a loss. And this is where I got to know the family, because of some work that I'd done previously in stem cell campaigns. I'm not a professional in the field, this was new to me at that time. So in September 2018, the campaign started. In December 2018, Anaya was seriously ill and the search was stepped up. And there was a huge learning curve along the way. We'll cover some of that in a few moments. March 2019, that should say, we have a match. But actually the fear was even greater there, because we couldn't celebrate, because as quickly as a match appears, it can go away for health reasons, or the donor may choose to change their mind. But in May 2019, as per the last Sikh Report presentation here in Birmingham, we announced that there was a donor and planning started for the operation. And you can see right on the end here, a picture of Anaya smiling, not knowing that she was going to be receiving her kidney later that day. Okay, and this is the first picture that we were allowed to release after transplant. This is after she came out of intensive care. Very happy baby, you can see very stable and very jolly. And this was a 6-week period before she was allowed to leave hospital. So in terms of mobilising the campaign, it was a huge learning curve for us as friends and family, and we really were reliant on personal contacts within the Sikh community and wider to help us raise our voices and create a platform. Obviously, social media was very useful, not always positive, but did allow us to reach a lot of people. And we had lots of great support, so NHS organ donations you might expect, but organisations such as British Sikh Nurses, themselves at the British Sikh Report, Professor Gert Randhawa, amongst others, helped us really get the coverage that we needed to make people aware of the importance for organ donation. Because this campaign wasn't just about Anaya herself, we were really sharing that actually this could happen to anyone. If it can happen to a newborn child, it can happen to absolutely anybody. And we went out, made use of community events, so Nagar Kirtans, wedding fairs, concerts, going into Gurdwaras. We also went to concerts such as the Gambara Gurwal programme. We covered 3 venues there. But we also contacted the media, Sikh Channel, Gal Channel and KTV, who all helped us share the message about Anaya and organ donation. Making use of BBC Asian Network, Sunny and Shay, and local radio stations. Basically, we left no stone unturned in the search for a donor. As you can imagine, time was against us. We needed to move as quickly as possible. And you can see here some of the events that we went to. So a TV appearance very early on with Harjaf Ungle, American Jyoti there, a huge effort by NHS organ donation, using something very visible to show all the organs that are transplantable. Working with Midland Lungar Seva Services. This was just weeks before Anaya's transplant, where the family sponsored a feed in Birmingham. And you can see some other examples of going out there, but really building this profile, building this identity. And here's some wider coverage, because this wasn't just about the Sikh community, it was about reaching a wider audience. So you'll see here, the Mirror picked up the story in December, and that picture there is from the first time Anaya met her donor, Surinder Sapal, lovely lady from Leeds, who decided that she would gift her spare kidney to Anaya. And you can see that an appearance on This Morning as well, just really brought some coverage to people doing good. It made me really proud as a Sikh to see a fellow Sikh stepping forward to donate part of their body and give their kidney to help a child in need. I want to focus now just about the experience of the campaign. There was some great feedback, and we did get a lot of people saying thank you for being here wherever we were. A couple of options there saying I'm already a donor, typically people having signed up with their driving licenses, or I've been meaning to sign up. That was the best news possible. So it showed that we were in the right place at the right time to encourage more people to donate, or saying let me take the information away. And that was people of all ages, taking leaflets home for their sons, daughters and grandchildren to raise the subject. I have to be honest, some really interesting facts that you raised there, Jagdev, that the Gurdwara are positioning themselves to cultivate these discussions. Our experience was, at that time, sadly, doors were not always readily opened, and it did take some dialogue. I worked on another campaign earlier this year, fantastic lineup with Harmeet Singh Gill. And unfortunately, we just weren't given the time needed to raise the subject. And in terms of the response from people out there that could be donors, it wasn't always positive, but this is great because it shows that there is a need for activism in our community. We don't want to talk about it. We're a community that's averse to discussing what might be considered a morbid subject, discussing post-life issues. People wrongly believing that it's against our faith, and there's some great pieces of work being done by NHS organ donation and lots of other groups, including the Gurdwara, including Project 550, to say actually this is the key tenet of our faith. There's nothing that aligns more with the principles of our faith than saving a life. Sadly, we also heard the comment, why don't we just let her die, which is a particularly painful comment, but we have to be honest and say that this was said, and one that I was on the receiving end. and shows that the train of thought, who knows what she did in her past lives to deserve this. Very painful train of thought, and one that needs challenging in the right way, because it's only through challenging it that we're going to get the results that we want. And some of those comments came from older generations, and that shows that there's got to be dialogue in the right language, using the right terminology. But moving forward, we've been, with the NICE campaign having come to an end, it's important that we take the lessons. There was a lot of heartfelt support, a lot of people with empathy for a NICE situation, for the parents finding themselves. We need to tackle this issue of the closed doors, because there continues to be families in need. So there's a Kidney for Bali campaign running at the moment. There was a Kidney for Simran campaign, which came to an end about 6 weeks ago because Simran successfully received the transplant. But we still have this aversion to post-life donations. Whilst the figures are moving in the right way, there is work that we can do as individuals, as professionals, to make that happen. And a lot of this is around family-based discussions, those dinner table conversations, sitting around, having that cup of tea discussion, because whilst there's been that law change, it still requires the family support from the donor to say, yes, we want our loved one's organs transplanted so that someone else can live. One other thing was that I found a lot of people saying, well, they won't want my organs. And my response to that was, let's leave that to the experts here, because actually you may be of a certain age, but the oldest person to donate was in their 90s. And the oldest living donor was in their 80s. So these are the kinds of things that we found and wanted to encourage a discussion. Not necessarily to get a yes, I will sign, but just something to open up those avenues, to move people closer to that yes. So at the right time, they would open their minds and perhaps the minds of others. Moving
Sandy,
forward.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but look, it's been fascinating hearing from everything that you've discussed. It really has been. I think it's such an important issue for us to be grappling with, and I think it's certainly something that we need to consider how best, as you've got your screen up now, moving forward, we do need to consider how best we can work together to change things. But Sandy, I just wanted to thank you for your time this evening. It's been very heartfelt, very emotive, as you said, but also ending on a positive. I like to think that there's the positivity for the future.
Yeah, thank you.
Sandy, thank you. If I could now invite Gurmeet Singh Randhawa to say a few words. Gurmeet is the chair of the Sikh Council of Wales. Gurmeet, over to you.